Coming up, we discuss whether Pro League All-Star games have outlived their usefulness because we see the stars all the time anyway. All right, for our second part of our discussion today, we saw the NBA had an All-Star game recently. The NFL had their Pro Bowl games a couple weeks ago. And one of the criticisms we've seen for things like this, these All-Star games, the NFL and NBA and stuff, is just that the people say the players don't play hard and they're not entertaining as much and the TV ratings are down and so forth. And it strikes me that this may just be a fundamental issue in the sense that because we can watch the stars of these teams. We can watch these teams anytime we want, whether it be through NBA, there's League Pass, and NFL, there's Sunday Ticket. It's not being able to see particular stars that you want to see is not that novel. And then you got YouTube. You can see these highlights and all that stuff all the time. Like we can watch whatever we want whenever we want to watch it. So versus like 1980, when the only chance if you lived in Miami, the only chance you see Larry Bird on television is at the All-Star game. There is maybe one or two national TV games in a year. And so the idea of wanting to see the stars themselves is just, or the need is not as great as it was then. Now, seeing them all together is a whole nother thing. But I wanted to ask you, Tunde, are we looking at just a structural problem where the interest and the dissatisfaction in these All-Star games, just in the fact that it's just not that new to see these people anymore? Or do you think there's more going
on? That's a good question. I think there's probably a little more going on. I don't think it's that we don't want to see these people or anything, or just, they're not new. I think you're right that the way that our media ecosystem for all of us, like you said, alluded to in the 1980s, it was broadcast television, maybe some cable, but primarily broadcast. And the amount of games were limited during the week. The amount of availability to see people outside your local market or regional market was limited. And then, like you said, we didn't have phones and tablets and all this stuff where we had services like YouTube where we could quickly call up any highlights of our favorite players, and people made all these nice videos of all these mashups and of highlights and things like that. So I do think that there was a bit more novelty with an All-Star game back in the day where it was something exciting, the only place in a whole year where you would really see all the greats together playing against each other. And then I also think that there's a certain
you would see the only place you'd see all the greats, and then but also got to see them play against each other. So those were like two separate draws. Like you get to see the greats and you get to see them together. So but go ahead.
So I mean, it was like an event, right? Like more of an event than it is now, clearly, because of, like I said, the inability for us to see these people at all times, like back then, like we do now. And I also think. This isn't, I don't want to be one of these guys blaming these younger athletes today and being, a middle-aged guy shaking my fist at the clouds and tell these kids to get off my lawn type of thing. But I do feel like there's probably been, I'll talk to the NBA specifically because I know that better than other sports leagues. Certain things that have allowed to creep in, I think, over time that have just got us here. Like, for example, the amount of money and contracts. A lot of times guys don't want to get hurt in anything outside of, let's say, a regular season or playoff game with their team.
Yeah, what they're actually paid those big bucks for. They don't want to jeopardize that.
Might say if you get hurt outside of this, then you're foregoing a quarter of your salary or whatever the case, right? And I just feel like there's a lot of other little examples like that if you add them up might have caused people to either play less aggressively and less competitively when they're playing, or to sit it out and not play at all. And I think one of the things, an area that I think we've seen in the NBA All-Star game, and then I'll shut up and hand it over, where I don't know if this is for those reasons, but I'd say where we've seen the lack of participation from stars, I think diminish it a bit, was something like the dunk contest. When I was a kid in the 80s, it was like a big deal. You had, Michael Jordan versus Dominique Wilkins, and that was huge. And then you had this outlier little guy named Spud Webb come in one year and win it. And and even in the late 90s, early 2000s, we had Vince Carter and these guys that were stars and entertaining at the All-Star game. And I noticed in the last decade, the guys winning the dunk contest are guys I never heard of.
Guy that, and nothing again. Mac McClung has done some entertaining dunks, but the guy who's won it the last 3 years doesn't even play in the NBA. Like he's
Yeah.
like a development league guy,
So
like
that's what
so.
I mean. So think about the symbolism of that, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, no,
So
I
anyway.
think that anytime you're looking at something like this, you got to look at the incentive structure, and I think you touched on something in terms of as far as that the players, from a baseline standpoint, make so much money now. And this is not to knock them. This is looking at, I think, when you look at the incentive structure, the whole point of that is saying it's not necessarily about the character of the people; it's about how a average person would act in this scenario based on where their incentives are and where they aren't. Uh, they have they all of it, NFL, which NFL doesn't even do a real football game anymore now. They doing flag football for there. They are doing gimmicks. NBA's doing gimmicks. They tried this tournament style thing this year. They've done they've switched it up, had players pick teams and all that. They're trying all these gimmicks because the leagues realize that, hey, we're having a hard time maintaining interest in this thing, at least the level we want. But the players have more to lose and less to gain from doing these things now. Whereas in the 80s, that wasn't the case. It was the opposite. They had more to gain. They could, with all the eyeballs and all the interest and stuff, you go out and show out there. That might be endorsements, which may dwarf your NBA salary. That may be all these other opportunities that you open up for yourself if you go show out in an all-star game. Versus now, it's like, nothing that they do is going to greatly enhance their earning capacity or their notoriety or anything. It's going to be kind of a wash at best. And at worst, you get hurt or you get embarrassed and so forth. So the incentive structure isn't set up for them. And this is one of the big complaints you hear is that, and this was in the NFL, is in NBA, like the players aren't trying that hard, and that's, I think that's a concern. If you're going to have these sports are entertainment products, but they're competitive entertainment products. And so you do need a level of competition for it to work. Now, remember, I talked about that there were two kind of things. One is the idea of I never get to see these players. Saw a lot of these players, so I want to see them in the All-Star game. The second piece is I want to see my favorite people team up and go against other people that I like as well. That piece is still the option of, or the draw of I never get to see these players. That's gone. They're not going to be able to recreate that. The scarcity doesn't exist anymore, and it won't come back. But the idea of getting to see your favorite players team up is still a potential draw. I mean, that's like you got all these the Marvel stuff. Like they took advantage of that, with this whole Avenger thing. And you got everybody has all these movies, and then they get together in a couple of these movies, and people get excited about that. So the idea of the team up is still something they can make some hay with. But yes, they do have to figure out a way, because they're selling a competitive product. They got to figure out a way to make it more competitive, and they have to overcome the lack of, or the way that the incentive structure is set up right now, which disincentivizes the creation of a competitive product. And the only thing I'll add to just real quick is that some of it is you can look at the players and say, particularly the prior generation, last 10 years or so, and that are you just the beneficiary here, or are you putting more in for the next generation as well? And that's the only place I can look at them and say, like, I don't knock it, because it's like, again, I see the incentive structure and I see why you come to that conclusion. The only thing I can say is that sometimes it is good to look beyond just your current situation and say, hey, how can I leave this better than why I found it? And so, but I don't know that that's enough, to just say, hey, don't leave this worse than where you found it, as an individual kind of looking inside yourself thing. I do think the creativity is good. Try to come up with something, because you got the Avengers Assemble kind of thing going, but how do you do that and get a competitive product out of it? NFL tried flag football. We'll see if that works over the next few years. I don't know what the NBA is going to do.
Yeah, I think the point about the competitive product matters a lot. I think in the end, it's just like any other consumer kind of good, that at the end of the day, consumers want quality. And especially
like if you're watching a comedic show, you want comedy. If you're watching a competitive product, you want competition to some degree.
And I think you make a good point when you said earlier about guys not wanting to get embarrassed. You know what I thought of, man? I don't mean to say this as a knock to anybody, but I was like, man, you saying the NBA is full of Drakes? You know what I mean? Like, I was thinking about like the way, Drake got such an L against Kendrick that it's like, I could see him not even want to show up to something like, I'm just going to sit it out, man. And I was thinking like, that's a
rap battle all-star game.
That's what I mean. Like, he might just be like, nah, I'm good. And that actually might be to his benefit.
But just to make that point, emphasize that point, like the reports are, from people, and you'll hear this, from people in the know, is that when they do these games, these kind of pickup style games in the summer, like the Drew League type things, or these different pro-am type leagues that some of the players that like to do it go around and do, they play much harder in those than they do in the All-Star games. And so it's like, well, hold up. But there's, that's not a broadcast everywhere around the world and, all this other stuff. That's a different thing. But all of the same disincentives are there, in that sense, like for them to not. So
no, I think number one, it would be nice to see a competitive all-star game like we had 25, 30 years ago, where guys at least try, and there is a certain level of pride to showing out a bit, and guys don't want to get embarrassed. They actually played some defense too, like that. I think there's something to that.
So then how do we change the incentive structure to work?
That's what I don't know about the incentives of all of it, because I'm sure there's a lot that we can't see too, just in this conversation. But I think to your point about changing, like, for example, I'll talk about the NFL. I think it's an interesting idea, the flag football thing. Number one, because specifically to the NFL, there's a lot more potential for injury, obviously, with that kind of sport. The other thing too is because of the potential for injury, I could see things as one of the complaints I saw is that this year's Pro Bowl that the running backs only combined had 3 carries. So it's like they might not have wanted to carry the ball too much because they don't want to run through a buzzsaw.
Well, there is no buzzsaw. That's the thing. No, the flag football ends up becoming like a 7-on-7 thing. So, but that's just the structure.
But either way, what I'm saying is by the ability of maybe knowing you're not have the potential to get as injured, maybe these guys would actually play a bit harder with flag football. The other thing I thought of is I know there's a push to try and make female flag football something a little bit taken more serious, like a professional league. So this could be a smart move by the NFL to say, looking at the long game, if we start promoting men doing flag football, there might be more of acceptance for a female league and generate revenue.
And the NFL has lobbied successfully to get the Olympics to add flag football,
So that's what I mean. So to me, I think the NFL's onto something with that. Let's see how the experiment goes.
So promoting, using it to promote a complementary type of thing.
Correct.
That's an easier answer. Like in the NBA, it's like, oh, okay, well, you could do something like that. But again, you still got to deal with the incentive structure. I remember watching the All-Star game the other day, and there was a breakaway, and I start holding my breath. Like, are they going to, is this guy going to try to jump up and contest the breakaway, which is, that's an easy place to get hurt. And they didn't. And I'm like, okay, good. So basketball, it's a little harder to do that. I don't know if you could do half court or something like that, or like the Unrivaled basketball league, the women's basketball league that just started. They did, as part of kind of their midseason thing, a one-on-one tournament, which was amazing, and so, but again, that goes into our NBA players. Would NBA players be willing to do that? There's conceivably much less chance of getting hurt in a one-on-one type of thing, or maybe a 2-on-2 kind of thing, like do some kind of, NBA jam type of tournament or something like that.
Giannis had an interesting, I think his idea was to have
to do the
like a USA basketball, but I guess not USA basketball like Olympics, because it would include, I guess, players like him.
No. He's saying have the American-born players play against everybody who's not from America. And so to try to create competitive juices and so forth.
Yeah, so that to me would be an interesting,
See, I just don't know that changes the incentive structure though for the at the top of the food chain. So
but it might change from a competitive standpoint, because that's where the American players are going to say
whether it would be you have more to gain than you have to lose potentially. For being competitive about it. I don't know. Maybe it will. Maybe if the international guys get out there and start trying to take it to the Americans out of pride will be like picking it up. But we don't know. The other thing I wanted to mention, though, real quick with this, and I wanted to touch on, our Kevin Durant, very popular player, but also a very online guy, got into some arguments with fans about the criticisms of the All-Star game. And his point with a lot of that was just that fans seem to just like to complain, and there's just nothing that people are going to be upset and complaining no matter what. And so do you think just kind of as a media culture or just a culture in general that we fall victim to that? Like maybe are we making too big of a deal about this? Like, is this just, hey, you know what? No matter what they do, people are going to complain. You still got a good number of people watching this thing, compared to most television, people don't watch anymore. They still get millions of people to watch this thing. So is this maybe all just overblown and all we're just listening to the people who want to complain?
Yeah, I'm thinking actually one of my old friends. I think he's Kevin Durant's boss, depending on if I got the right team. I might send him this and tell him to show Kevin and just tell Kevin, "Welcome to America, dude."
Well, I think he knows. People
gonna complain about whatever you're doing, good or bad. They're just gonna complain. So no, I think. Look, I think Kevin Durant is onto something that's greater in our culture. I mean, look, and we talk about this on various conversations, which is the internet as a town square. And like any town square, it's become occupied by a lot of people throwing tomatoes from the cheap seats. You know what I mean? And so I think there is a lot of that's the reality of online world today, no matter what it is in our life, in our culture, that just, people you're going to have some people genuinely out there trying to have conversations and how can you make stuff better. And then you're going to have probably 5 to 10 times more people that are just there to pile on about something.
Hold on. I think
you got
you're
bots.
Wrong. I think you're wrong.
AI.
I think you're wrong. I think what it is, man, I think generally speaking, you're right. I think the distribution you're saying is wrong. We're in a golden age of haters. Like, that's really what it is. Like, online, social media type of thing, because negativity creates engagement, and engagement is engagement is rewarded on social media. Negativity reigns. So there may be the haters may only be 10% of the people. There might be a lot of people, but they're the ones that are going to get amplified. And so it's not even just the cheap seats. Like, major media understands this. And so now haters dominate major media too. And like, hey, how are you good at hating? Are you good at coming up with a negative thing to say about anything? Hey, you can get $1 million contract, because we need somebody out here hating. And so it's just, I think that's kind of the thing, is that, so yeah, there are many people who thought the All-Star game was fine. But they don't hop on their computer and then start over their phone, start typing in, man, this All-Star game, it was cool. Like, that's not what they're going to do.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But the people who want to say, oh, this sucks, everything sucks, yada, 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 not only are they more inclined to hop on and post, but then those posts are more likely to be seen because they're going to be engaging. People are saying, thumbs up, thumbs down, I hate you too, yada, yada, yada. And so we're just living in this golden age of haters. And so hate is just kind of hating on something, hating on this, hating on that is just what we're going to see more of. And I do think that clouds our perception on, like, there's a reason why people are pessimistic about everything, because all they see is the haters talking about everything.
Yeah. No, you're right. And I mean, look, I think it's probably a little bit combo of all of it, right? I think you're absolutely right. And that probably affects how, getting back to just the NBA, how fans perceive the NBA, because we talked about this when we had the discussion, I think, over the holidays about my experience playing Call of Duty Black Ops 6.
Yeah.
And how I liked the game a lot. And then I went online, and in 2 hours, I started questioning if I liked the game because I saw the hating on the game. And I'm thinking,
all you saw was all this negativity.
I thought I liked this game, and now I don't think I like it. Why is that?
Did I like it?
So it's probably the same thing with the NBA. It's funny, James, because I don't watch basketball as much as I used to when I was younger. I think I told you this. All this hating on the NBA lately that you see on YouTube and on all the algorithm, like you're saying about the conflict, right? That's what I'm getting in my phone. And it's funny. I think I told you that I've only watched like 2-3 NBA games this season. But one of them I watched in a hotel room in early January when I was out of town. And it was like some random teams like the Pelicans versus the Mavericks or something, not some great team. Man, this game was awesome. It was really entertaining. It was great. A bunch of young players. I mean, the only guy I really recognized was Kyrie Irving and Zion Williams. I didn't recognize most of the players, and they all were good. Look at me being older. I was going to say they look like good, hard playing kids. It was like, that's what I mean. Like, I was like, oh man, this is just a good competitive game. These kids playing hard. Like, all this hating on the NBA. Like, why? And
if you spend time online, though, you would think the NBA is the worst possible thing it could possibly ever be. And it's like, I do think that's what I'm saying. I do think that because hating on stuff is so profitable and so prolific.
You're right. And the unfortunate thing, James, as you said it, I had this immediate in my mind. I hate to bring it up. I just thought how sad it is because it's basically translated nationally. Like, so many Americans hate their country. They think this country sucks and everything sucks and we got the
economy
worst
sucks. Everything sucks. Like, it's just like, geez.
Maybe you go overseas to some other country, you'd be like, damn, I miss America. You know what I'm saying? Like, so, but anyway.
But yeah, I mean, I thought that Durant bringing that up and putting it front and center, I thought was very, it was good to have that as part of the discussion. It's just like, look, people are just going to complain, and negativity is, it just springs eternal online. And it's like, this is just what and just in general with our media, it's not about with media rewards, again, incentive structure. It's not about can you inform, can you enlighten, can you make people feel good about things? It's really about, can you stir some kind of emotion in them? If so, then you drive engagement. And stirring emotion, the most reliable way to do that is to say something negative. And so that's just kind of where we are.
Can you shape the missile? Remember that.
Yeah, shape the missile. Exactly. And so I think that's going to cloud our perceptions with these things. And so Whether it's as bad as we kind of perceive or whether it's not, we don't really know. But I do think, though, again, if you're like I said, it's pretty simple. If you're selling, drama, then there better be some drama there. If you're selling comedy, then there better be some comedy there. If you're selling sports, there kind of needs to be some competition. So they do need to work on that.
Exactly.
But at the same time, it's probably not as bad as what we think. So, but I think we can wrap from there. We appreciate everybody for joining us on this episode of Call Like I See It. Subscribe to the podcast, rate it, review it, tell us what you think, send it to a friend. Until next time, I'm James Keys.
I'm Tunde, and I'm not an NBA All-Star, unfortunately.
That's why you brought it today, man.
That's why I'm on a podcast.
All right, so we'll talk soon.